Now, no one can steal our destiny. You know that. The devil can't steal our destiny. God doesn't take our destiny away. But we can block our own destiny. Number one is with fear. Fear. The children of Israel didn't make it to the promised land, that whole generation, out of fear. They were afraid of the unknown. They were afraid because they had heard there were giants in the land. And so that whole generation missed it. And this is a definition I heard of the wilderness, and I think it's pretty true. When you can't go back and you won't go forward, you're stuck. And that's a pretty bad wilderness. So the children of Israel had seen God's mighty acts. They had walked through the Red Sea on dry land. Okay, the Red Sea was pretty big. And so through the night, the Lord kept moving the waters back, and like his breath was blowing on that land, and it became dry so they could walk across. So they get across, and then, of course, Pharaoh's armies are chasing after them. So fear jumps back in their heart. And then God closes the waters in on all their enemies. And so once the Red Sea closed, apparently God did not plan on reopening it. So they were there on the other side of the Red Sea. But then they got too afraid to go forward. They're like, this is a wilderness. So that was their wilderness. They couldn't go back, and they wouldn't go forward. And so remember when Moses sent Joshua and Caleb and then the other spies into the land to see what it looked like? So they went in. And Caleb remembered the taste of the grape. Remember those big clusters of grapes that they brought back? And it took 40 more years after the spies went to the promised land. It took 40 more years for that unbelieving generation to die out and for Joshua and Caleb's generation, because for 40 years Joshua and Caleb remembered the taste of the fruit of the promised land. So sometimes when we are walking in that pain and in a place of waiting to go to the next place, the word says, taste and see that the Lord is good. If we can just get one taste of the Lord, one taste of his promise to us, that can sustain us till we get to the next place. Because we go from glory to glory, from season to season. And I heard a definition of a season, because I used to use that word all the time, and I still do, a season. What a season is, it's your sphere of authority. So if you're not walking in the season God has you in, you're walking out of authority. And then we wonder why you don't have any power in the Lord, or why you don't have any peace in your heart, and why things aren't going so well. It's because you're out of your sphere of authority for that time. So when you're in your authority, then you're walking in your proper season. And so, like Becky shared earlier, when the girls were little, we traveled with them, and then when they started school, I stayed home and worked at their school and did that for several years, and then I would travel with David when I could. And then I love my local church, and I love to serve there and be a part of my local church. And all these things, all the giftings were in there, and I thought I had to do them all at one time. And what I figured out is that God gives us many, many giftings, but then he gives us seasons that we use them in. Because we can't use every single gift we've ever been given. I know when I got married, I received a lot of gifts. I received a lot of dishes. Well, you know, I do not get every single plate out every time David and I have a meal, because we can't eat on all those plates. Well, you know, every gift God has given you, I don't think we're called to use them all at once. There are different seasons. You know, sometimes we're called to minister at home. Or for me, I was called to be at home and minister, and when David came home, to have my home in order, for it to be a place of peace for him. Now, I do have to admit, when the girls were little bitty, when he came home, sometimes there wasn't a lot of peace. And I was tired. I had a 3-year-old and infant twins. And so he would come in the house all excited, and I'm like, I just need you to change a diaper. After you change a diaper, you can tell me all the songs you wrote. You can tell me how many people the Lord touched, but I just need you to change a diaper. And you know, that was not wrong. It was okay, because he is their dad. And so he'd be like, okay. Thank goodness for Dr. Dobson, who talks about parenting. So that way I wasn't wrong to need that. So find out your season, because that's going to be a part of your today destiny. Now, some of you have big things that are waiting out there, but I know for me, I would miss the little daily destiny moments, those little kisses from God, because I kept waiting for the big to happen. I kept waiting for a lot of money to come in, or I kept waiting to go on this great trip overseas, or I kept waiting for my children to grow up, and I would just miss the season I was in. So what is that season you're in? Find out. Ask the Lord. I asked the Lord to show me, okay, what season am I in now? My girls are grown. I know I'm traveling with David, but for me, because I'm not just with David. Now, that's a big part of my life right now, but who am I outside of David? Who has the Lord called me to be individually? So this is what the Lord gave me, that my marriage would be first now. And it wasn't that it wasn't first before, but raising children takes a lot of energy. How many of you have children? Okay. How many of you know it takes a little bit of time to raise those children? It does. So now it's so wonderful that David and I have come into a different communion time, that, our times together, traveling, and even though sitting on a plane for, 12 hours isn't great fun, at least David and I are getting along. So my marriage, and then mothering, and then ministry. Now, ministry doesn't mean that I'm putting God last. It just means I'm putting the activity of ministry in the proper place where it needed to be. Because if I'm ministering to the Lord, and then I'm ministering to my husband and ministering to my children, the ministry will just naturally fall into place. So once you decide that you don't want to stay in the wilderness, and that you're ready to find your next step in destiny, that's your promised land. You cross over into that promised land. It was waiting. It had been waiting for 40 years. God would have let them cross over 40 years earlier if they hadn't been so fearful and full of unbelief. Promised land doesn't mean that everything is just going to be totally smooth, because I think that's what a lot of the children of Israel thought. They're going to get into the promised land. But it's amazing in Joshua, the first thing the Lord tells him is, be strong and very courageous. Well, you would think if there aren't any battles, why do you need to be strong and courageous? This is going to be, hey, we have made it to the land of milk and honey. We have all these big grapes we can eat. Everything's going to be so easy. But there were battles in the land, but the difference was in the mentality. The former generation felt defeated. Apparently, this generation had a general in Joshua that was going to lead them into victory, to victory, to victory. So you could be in a promised land because the Lord believes you're strong enough to fight the battle. The battle is the Lord's. He fights for us, and he gives us the victory in the battle. So it might not be that you've done something wrong or that you're in a wilderness if you have a battle. What it could be is the Lord's going, I knew you were ready, so I'm going to let you fight this battle. Just like with Celeste, for months, I had just accepted that she was going to be, a little girl that wouldn't get to walk. But when the time came to fight the battle, it happened in the Spirit, and the Lord did it, and her miracle came. Well, your miracle is waiting for you, and the battle is the Lord's, but you have to participate. So I want to encourage you today that if you're in a battle, it's not because you have done something wrong or because you're weak or because you're not in your destiny. It very well could be you're in your destiny. That the Lord goes, yes, she's ready. So be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Be strong and very courageous, for the Lord is giving you the land. The land could be your marriage. It could be your personal healing. It could be your emotional healing. So be strong and very courageous, for the Lord is giving you the land. In Joshua, it also says, be strong and very courageous, for I will be with you. Isn't that great? If you fully know and realize that when you're going in to the promised land, which has battles, the Lord will be with you. Just like he said about Bethany, I will go with her where I'm taking her. He says that to you. I will go with you where I'm taking you.